Hello friends, I'm Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? I hope you're doing great wherever you are in this world. I hope everything is good for you. It's good for me. I had a really very pleasant weekend despite some tummy issues. Everything was great. I had a good time. Finished the Dark Tower series. Like I said I was going to on Friday. I got it done, and that's what we're here to talk about finally. I think a couple of you have been really wanting to engage with me on what you think about the Dark Tower, but you've been kind of holding off because spoilers. So if you have not read the series and you are interested in it, click away, because this I'm going to talk about everything, and there's going to be all sorts of spoilers, and yeah, that's your warning. Go away if you don't want to know spoilers. So I asked your opinions on the series. But before we get into that, let me tell you what I think about the ending, because the biggest criticism is Stephen King's ending, and I think that's true for most of his books. Stephen King is what people call a discovery writer, and the idea is that he doesn't plan, he just sits down and types, and whatever comes out is what we read. And so he's the facilitator of the story, not necessarily the writer. So the story kind of tells itself in his head, I guess, is what he likes to claim. And what that means is there's often this really long build-up and then this sprint for some sort of finish that is usually not very redeeming. In this case, however, I felt the ending was rushed, yes, but I felt the ending was perfect, because there's really two endings to this story. If you choose to stop reading when he tells you to, he has that little afterword where he says, stop right here. If you choose to stop right there, the story's over. That's it. It ends perfectly, or not perfectly, depending on who you are. It's only if you choose to continue reading does the story perpetually loop. All right. And so if you don't want to, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, or if you stuck through, even though you're going to let me spoil it for you, the story is about a man's journey to reach a goal, and he reaches that goal only to find out that he screwed up the entire journey and has to start over. And so he goes to his final destination. He walks through the final door and starts back at the beginning because he screwed up. And the way that King ends it is he walks through the final door and that's it. We don't know. And then there's this afterword. And the afterword says, stop reading. Like the end, what you just read is the ending. But if you really want to know what happens, here's what happens. And then he takes us through him walking through the door, ending back up in the beginning of the books. Only this time, it's slightly different. He has one of the key elements that he left behind in an earlier version of the story. And so what interests me about that ending is if you choose to stop reading, when Roland walks through the final door, that's it. That's the end of the story. He gets to his destination. And what happens in that tower, whether he becomes a god or whatever, that's completely up to you. Whereas if you, the reader, choose to ignore Stephen King's plight for you to stop reading, and you continue reading, then Roland's story starts over again. So you are the reason why Roland's story keeps going, not Roland. But then, we have a character in a book that is a classic sci-fi western, spaghetti western character, Clint Eastwood inspired, who is obviously a white dude. Susanna calls him a honky muffa 1,000 times, so he can't not be white. Then we have this casting of Idris Elba, who personally I think is phenomenal for this role, for more reasons than he's an amazing actor, and he has that kind of, I don't want to say dead inside, but that deadpan face of just being able to stare into your soul. He's got that, and that's what Roland needs to have, is that penetrating gaze. But also because he is black, it's a huge casting, because that signifies that this isn't the Roland from our books. Okay, either this is a different Roland, But I choose to think that there's only one Roland. Like, he's a catalyst, right? So this is the next Roland, the version after the books. And that's basically what King has said. I think King tweeted a picture of like a horn, and it said, one last time or whatever. So I think the ending was good. Enough. The thing that bothers me about the ending is the last 3 books was this huge build-up for Randall Flagg and the Crimson King. And both of them ended up just being bumbling idiots. Like, Randall Flagg was literally a bumbling idiot and admits that he is not a sorcerer. He just dumb-lucked his way through this whole thing and pretended. And then the Crimson King goes crazy and does what? He throws a couple grenades and then gets erased? Like, it was the most unsatisfying ending to 2 of the biggest villains ever. The ending of the book, I'm fine with. It's the ending of those 2 characters that was just kind of like, really? That's hella lame. And it was more like, oh shit, I'm already this many pages into this book, I better wrap it up, so we'll just forget the Crimson King was ever there, we'll erase him. So it was that was the part of the book that I was unsatisfied with. I would have loved to have seen like a final confrontation. Instead, the final confrontation, if you choose to call it that, is in you, the reader. Do you choose to see what happened? Because that conflict is now yours. Either I choose to see what happens, or that's it. He walks through the door and it's all over. So I asked for your opinions. Let's get to some of your opinions, because I could literally talk about this forever. And if you guys are interested in having more discussions about the Dark Tower series, the comment section down below is a great place for that. If you want to have more of a one-on-one, feel free to email me, chevee@thedailyshed.com, and we can talk about it. I'm very open to talking about this book series. I did not think that it was the most amazing thing ever. I don't even remotely put it anywhere near the Lord of the Rings series as a great series, but I did enjoy reading it, and I am glad I read it. So, say what you will. All right, how do I get to... Oh, there we go. New page. Let's see. Andy Van Zant said, I feel like it has really strong segments with some wacky dreamlike stuff is happening interspersed. I definitely agree with that. The problem that I have with the way that these books were written is there's all of this like tie-in little dangly threads that Stephen King keeps teasing. He writes this in a very detective noir Columbo kind of way, where the characters figure something out, but King doesn't tell you what it is until chapters later when and they have their little aha moment. And so there's all these little hints about this is supposed to mean something, and that's supposed to, Eddie says, I know that means something, but I don't know what it is. And Jake's like, oh man, I remember this, but I don't remember why. And so there's all these little like threads that Stephen King dangles in front of you, and none of that shit is ever resolved. Like, it's just, that's it. So it's all these red herrings, and that bothers me. It's a irresponsible way to write a story like this. If you're doing like a one-shot where you have this sort of like, you the reader are I don't want to say invested in, but are part of the figuring out the story, and then it wraps up at the end, that's one thing. But when it's like every chapter, every main chapter, not every subchapter, but every main chapter has this same repetitive cycle, and you're constantly dangled until he pulls the thread away, and we'll just forget about that. That's all, and he never goes back to that shit, and that kind of sucks. I would say it's arrogance. It's an arrogant way of writing. Michael Taylor said, the series as a whole was enjoyable, though the ride is nonstop highs and lows of enjoyment for me. Every other book, it seemed. Yeah, and I'll agree with that. Every other book was a completely different tone. We had this conversation on Twitter. Heavy Cardboard said, I tried it multiple times to make it through the first book and failed each time. It just felt too non sequitur. Yeah, I get that. And somebody else commented, and we had this discussion about how the revised first book is really, really good. I much prefer the revised version versus the first version, and I think I said that before on the first episode where we talked about Dark Tower. I really do wish he would go back and revise. His original plan was to revise the whole series. I wish he would. Benny Sperling said, Book 4 sucked. I said, that's all you got? And he said, I enjoyed the first 3 books. It took a downturn after that. I felt like he was writing just to write, like it was a commitment. I read through book 7. They were okay, but really not great. That was after I greatly enjoyed the first 3 books. Yeah, I agree with that, I think. The 4th book felt like it was forced, but I really enjoyed the setting. I enjoyed that story. Because for me, I was invested in this weird world of Roland's and how it came to be and the gunslinger persona. And so after book 1, that's just kind of tossed aside, and now we throw New York into it, and it's this weird back and forth. I wanted to see much more of the Roland world. I don't really give a shit about our world. That means nothing to me. He also said he's excited for the movie, and Elba was a good casting. I agree with that completely. We already had that discussion. So overall, like I said, I think it was a good series, but it has its faults. So we have a few phone calls. Let's hear what we have to say.
Hey, Chevee, this is Jay.
Hi, Jay.
Just calling about your little query out to ask for Dark Tower opinions. I have to admit, I've only gone through the Wolves of Kala in the series as a whole. I read the first.
I did not like Wolves, by the way.
2 books in hard form, and the rest I've done in audio format. And I suspect that audio format might, change my attitude somewhat, but just the brief synopsis of what, even though as a whole, King's style through this whole series, lots of tangents, foreshadows, flashbacks, flip arounds, and all that, and that's fine and dandy. What I particularly like and what it really appeals, I guess, in the audio format is just the turns of speech and how the world is built and how everything is experienced and told, and listening to it as opposed to reading it, it really kind of paints a picture of this world and the feeling in it, and I kind of catch myself after I'm done listening to an audio, kind of wanting to implement some of the turns of phrases and the quirky manners of speech in my personal dealings, But before I go dragging on too long, you have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you, Si. I am interested to hear how a lot of the words are pronounced, because it is, essentially a made-up language. All right, and finally, I've left this till last. Adam, huge friend of the show, has been, I think, itching to talk about this. So I think this message goes on a little bit, and we're gonna let him have his time.
Hey, Chevee, it's Adam Barker calling in to discuss the Dark Tower series.
Cheers, Adam.
So, for me, I did love the journey that the series presented.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely felt sort of disjointed between, and I didn't read the revised, so I don't know about that, but it felt very distinct between the first 3 books, the 4th book, and then books 5 through 7. It was the choices that King made for books 5 through 7 were odd to me. It was interesting to see the sort of the surreal aspects. There's going to be some spoilers here, so
spoiler away.
Involving actually meeting Stephen King and adding himself to the storyline gave it sort of a dreamlike quality to the novel, which was really odd, interesting though. The one thing I didn't necessarily care for was was pulling from popular references like the Harry Potter snitches and all that stuff. That just seemed very an odd choice for a novel. The thing that I really didn't care for in those books was it felt like there were long sections of things that didn't feel particularly related to the plot, and then like key moments in the plot felt rushed.
Entire
like
books.
Confrontation with the Crimson King and confrontation with the child of Susan.
Mordred is
and just
an afterthought.
It didn't meet with everything that did come before. It didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
The ending to me felt like an absolute cop-out. I understand what he was saying was that it was about the journey, but you're going to write a 7-book series about something where people are following and follow you for years and years, to end in that way, where basically a non-ending, just feels really wrong. I've read other sort of epic series that have dealt with things, and I understand the scope that King is trying to put in place, but to me, when I read that, it felt very much like someone who didn't know what he wanted to do with it. So, like someone who was brand new to the craft and didn't know what he wanted to do with the series, and just said, you can do whatever you want with it. And no, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it does from a certain perspective, but it just felt very wrong to me. And really kind of spoiled a lot of the series for me at that point. The first 3 books, I know a lot of people don't necessarily care for them because of the way they're written, because of the rich fantasy that's there. I thought were excellent. I loved sort of the world that he built. 4 was interesting just from some of that perspective. But 5 through 7, while I enjoyed reading them, did not feel, they just felt okay to me. I really wish...
He got cut off. I don't know what you said there at the end, but yes, I agree with you. If you've read much of Stephen King's other work, you'll know that most of his books feel that way. It feels like he just doesn't know what he's supposed to be writing, and he just wraps it up somehow. And it's really kind of frustrating, and it's part of the reason why I don't enjoy his books, because they're very arrogant on top of that. But this series, I do think it was a good journey. The thing that I like about the ending is it leaves it open for us to have more adventures with Roland and Jake. And I guess Susanna and Eddie, but I really don't care about those characters. But I will definitely agree. There was a huge volume of work set up dealing with Roland's child, with Mordred, and with the king, and with Randall Flagg, and all 3 of them ended up just kind of just complete incompetent failures. And that just sucked. That felt incomplete to me. So maybe in this version, the new cycle, the new Roland cycle, the Idris cycle, something will happen. But there's entire books you could skip in this series, and it really wouldn't affect anything. Wolves of Akala, I hated that book. Nothing happens in that book. Literally, nothing in that book. You could skip it, and it wouldn't, other than... If you said, what do I need to know about Wolves of the Kala, I would tell you, Susanna is pregnant with a demon. Skip the rest of the book. Nothing else happens in that book. That's literally it, and we just move on. But, yeah, this has already gone on long enough. We're at like 16, 17 minutes. So, thank you guys for calling in. Thank you for your thoughts on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff. I really do appreciate it. Again, comment section down below. We can continue this discussion for however long you guys want to continue having the discussion. That's the cool thing about this platform, is these videos are always available. I'm still answering questions from a video I put up 5 years ago. I'll be here forever. So, thank you for being here. See you next time.
Hey, Doc, wait! I want to ask you something.
Today's random fact comes from coolcosmos.ipac.caltech.edu. How many miles is it from the Earth to the Sun? The Sun is at an average distance of about 93 million miles, which is 150 million kilometers, away from the Earth. It is so far away that light from the Sun, traveling at a speed of 186,000 miles per second, takes about 8 minutes to reach us. Didn't we have a sunlight thing not too long ago?